Continuing in an inquiry into the human mind on the principles of common sense, edited by Derek Brooks, by Thomas Reid. We are in Chapter 2. At the end of Section 7 of Chapter 2. I beg leave to make use of the word suggestion, because I know not one more proper to express the power of the mind, which seems entirely to have escaped the notice of philosophers, into which we owe many of our simple notions, which are neither impressions nor ideas, as well as many original principles of belief. I shall endeavor to illustrate by an example what I understand by this word. He's going to use the word suggestion, because he doesn't have a better word, to describe something important that philosophers have usually missed. We all know that a certain kind of sound suggests immediately to the mind a coach passing in the street. These days, perhaps we would say a certain kind of vroom sound suggests an automobile. It not only produces the imagination, but the belief that a coach is passing, or the vroom sound suggests the belief that there's a car, or perhaps a motorbike. Yet there is here no comparing of ideas, no perception of agreements or disagreements to produce this belief. We're not reasoning to it, we just jump to it from the sensation, from hearing the sound. Nor is there the least similitude between the sound we hear and the coach we imagine and believe to be passing. The experience of the sound in our minds doesn't have a resemblance to the thing out there in the world. It is true that this suggestion is not natural and original. It is the result of experience and habit. It is a suggestion of the mind, a motion of the mind, if you will, not necessarily an inference, but a motion of the mind from one thing to another, from the sensation to the idea of its source, its cause, from the sensation of the thing to the idea of the thing. It is something that learns from experience. But I think it appears from what hath been said that there are natural suggestions, particularly that sensation suggests the notion of present existence, and the belief that what we perceive or feel does now exist, that memory suggests the notion of past existence, and the belief that what we remember did exist in time past, that our sensations and thoughts do also suggest the notion of a mind and the belief of its existence and of its relation to our thoughts. By like natural principle, it is that a beginning of existence or any change in nature suggests to us the notion of a cause. It compels our belief of its existence. And in like manner, as shall be shown when we come to the sense of touch, certain sensations of touch, by the constitution of our nature, suggest to us extension, solidity, and motion, which are nowise like to sensations, although they have been hitherto confounded with them. It's actually a really rich paragraph. There's a lot here. Okay, let's review. Let's see if I can review briefly and not spend too much time on it. Reid is trying to articulate common sense philosophy as a better philosophy, something better than the foolish philosophy of the modern era. The modern era foolish philosophy has its insights. Its greatest service, perhaps, is to show us how philosophy goes wrong, leading, using the illustration of the road that leads to the coal pit, leading to the skepticism of Hume. And this shows us what premises that led to skepticism we have to go back and reconsider. Modern philosophy, though, can also be understood as doing us a great service of helping us realize that certain things, well, helping open up whole new areas of philosophy to study that we never really paid attention to before, hardly ever. But also it gives us the service of showing us the importance of this insight that there are what John Locke and other people have called secondary qualities. In other words, that the sensation or the experience of perceiving something is, strictly speaking, a mental phenomenon, a purely mental phenomenon. When you see something, well, let me rephrase, when you experience the perception of sight, the experience itself is a purely mental thing. The sensation itself is purely in your mind. The mistake of the modern philosophers was to assume that what you perceive directly. And maybe I'm doing a little too much emphasis on the Berkeley side of things. I have to go back and review my Locke notes. The mistake of the modern philosophers, maybe focusing too much on Berkeley, was to assume that what we perceive directly. So that since the sensation is in the mind, correct insight, all we actually perceive is in the mind. Reid is trying to help us understand that you can have a philosophy of perception and epistemology. Let's emphasize philosophy of perception. You can have a philosophy of perception that recognizes that we perceive things in the world indirectly. I perceive the book, I perceive the teacup. I do so by means of sensations. The sensations are my experiences, they're purely in my mind, but they are the means by which I get to the idea of the thing existing outside my mind. And this is correct, and there's no actual resemblance between the sensation itself and the thing itself. Here, the sound, the vroom sound of a motorbike or an automobile, or the sound of a horse and coach passing, is not the experience of hearing the sound, the sensation of hearing that sound, is not something that actually resembles the reality outside the mind and the world. But the mind automatically goes to it. I was trying to review, and now I'm starting to explain everything with no transition from the review. That's probably harmless. Well, let's go back and review one other thing, though. He is explaining, in chapter 2 here, smell. He's explaining how the sensation of smell works, how the faculty of smell works. And he's using it to illustrate the whole philosophy of perception that will do all these things, that will allow us to take some insights from modern philosophy, Descartes, Malebranche, Locke, Berkeley, and Hume, without making their mistakes that they made early on that lead to the folly of David Hume's skepticism. And in addition to explaining this philosophy of perception, he's also giving us a common sense epistemology, a theory of knowledge based on common sense. Common sense, we must not misunderstand as meaning that which most people think is obvious at some particular time or place, as if the existence of God seemed like common sense in medieval Europe or I don't know, modern Saudi Arabia or something, or as if heliocentrism is common sense now and geocentrism is common sense in another era. No, common sense is what everyone knows to be true. But it's not even just that. It's principles everyone knows to be true, carving out a few exceptions for people whose minds aren't quite working properly or who've been led into doubt by bad philosophy. Common sense is what everyone knows to be true about foundational principles. And it's about those foundational principles that he's talking here. If we rewind, I think, 2 videos in this series, and going back to the end of section 5, you see Reid talking about, as part of his elaboration of how the sensation of smell, the faculty of smell works, talking about the reality of sensation, the reality of the experience of perceiving something, and the importance of memory, and our common sense belief that we are perceiving, that our sensations are real things, and that our past experiences really happened. Common sense beliefs common sense trust in sensation, common sense trust in memory. These are 2 common sense principles. He compared them to a third, mathematics. We know that 2 + 2 = 4. We don't believe these things based on evidence. We don't need to. These are first principles. These are principles on the basis of which we believe other things. And there's not anything that can be known without appealing to these first principles. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone who tries to avoid it is still appealing to other first principles that are totally in the same boat as these. Even Descartes, with his efforts to prove everything he knows based on the principle I exist, is appealing to the principle I exist, which is a foundational first principle, a common sense principle, which is in the same boat as these other ones like memory and sensation. Okay, so they're all known as first principles, etc., etc. The math one was, I think, more of a comparison. And sensation and memory were the 2 that he's explicitly connected to his analysis of the faculty of smell. Moving to section 6, he added belief in the self. So sensation, memory, and self. That's 3. Now, in this passage, now we've done the review. Now let's go back to what we're supposed to be talking about in this video. Section 7. The suggestion of a thing out in the world as the source of our sensation. Now we're adding a 4th one, causality. We have sensation, memory, causality, sensation, memory, self, and causality, with the comparison to mathematics, but let's leave that aside. Sensation, memory, the existence of the self, and causality. These are 4 common sense principles, but if you want to get technical, maybe it's a little bit more than 4. Let's clarify cause. The idea of cause now accompanies those other ideas, sensation, memory, and self, and specifically what we're talking about is the cause of our senses. The thing out there that causes us to experience these sensations. The teacup is causing me to experience my sensation of white and blue when I look at this thing. And we believe that the thing exists. We believe it more or less automatically. It is a motion of the mind, and a very common sense and proper motion of the mind from the sensation to the belief in the thing. And Reid says suggestion is the best word I've got for it. It's not an inference. Here, Hume is right. Hume would have said it's not an inference. But it's not a stupid, mindless instinct. It's a proper, natural, it's a natural principle. It is built into human nature that we think this way. And it's proper. And also, it's the foundation of all knowledge anyway. Or it is one of those principles, which is the foundation of all knowledge anyway. But what are these principles? Let's be a little more systematic and then see if I can shut up and then this video will last. It's going longer than I'd hoped it would. I think it appears from what has been said that there are natural suggestions, particularly that sensation suggests the notion of present existence, and the belief that what we perceive or feel does now exist, that memory suggests the notion of past existence, and the belief that what we remember did exist in time past, and that our sensations and thoughts do also suggest the notion of mind, and the belief of its existence and of its relation to our thoughts. He's going over a commentary on the faculty of smell and giving us a philosophy of perception. He's not being systematic in laying out what all these principles are. He will do that, but it's not in this passage. It may not even be in this book. Eventually, after wrapping up this book and after who knows how many videos, we will have to probably do at least one more listing. I believe the number is 12 common sense principles from Reid, but it may be in a different book. We'll see what we find as this series continues. But let's see if we could be systematic based on this sentence we just reviewed. There's sensation, memory, self, and cause. That's 4 with comparison to mathematics. But if we're going to be technical, listing the principles, there's the belief that, now these are common sense, foundational principles, first principles, the sort of principles from which we get all our knowledge. There's the belief that I have a sensation, that I am experiencing something in such and such a fashion, experiencing red or whatever. There's the sensation, there's the belief that I'm having this sensation, and there's the belief that it is caused by a thing in the world. And there's the belief that that thing exists in the world outside the mind. That's 2. And then there's belief that I am there perceiving it. That's 3. And there's the belief that my past experiences, now right now I'm remembering the perceiving of that red pen, the belief that my past experiences happened, belief that the past happened, and my belief that my memory puts me in contact with it. So you could look at these a little more systematically. There's the belief that the thing outside my mind really exists in the world, the belief that I am sensing it, or sensing, having a sensation caused by it, and the belief that the past exists, and the belief that my memory is putting me in some contact with it. So the thing outside the mind, my sensory faculties putting me in contact with it, and the thing in the past that I experienced, and my memory putting me in contact with those experiences in the past, plus the mind, which has this knowledge. So there's a lot of common sense principles. And Reid is explaining all of them as he goes through his analysis of how perception works. We shall continue looking at the analysis in subsequent videos. Thanks for watching.